It's the Kyle Heimann Show on Redeemer Radio.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Flavor of the Week, brought to you by Banditos, fresh made daily. In Flavor of the Week, Kyle sits down with one of our local priests over 4 different episodes to sample variations of a favorite food or drink while they discuss the ins and outs of life as a priest.
Welcome to Flavor of the Week, Part 2 with Father Thomas Shoemaker. Do you prefer Father Thomas or Father Tom?
Father Tom is good.
All right. I am Kyle Heimann. We're here with 3 different blends of wine left. We did the George last week. These come from Captain Cork. Andy Levenmoth, the owner, actually handpicked these for us. Well, he picked 3 of them. I picked 1, the Don Bosco. We tried the one last week named after his father. Very good. I really enjoyed that. And we've got a Chardonnay. We have a red blend and something from Italy. So, do you have a preference on our next flavor?
Let's take the Don Bosco. How about?
Okay, Don Bosco it is. This is actually a screw top.
Okay.
That's how fancy the one I picked was. But I don't read Italian, so red sweet sparkling wine.
Okay.
This might be more your Fago.
Might be. I like sweet.
Last week you said sparkling. I wonder if this is supposed to be served cold. I don't know that I'm really doing you a service here, Father. So last week we talked about your kind of discernment process and your path to the priesthood, that you are a dentist, which is not very common amongst our priests.
Yeah.
Do you practice dentistry very often?
No. I did, when I was first ordained, I used to volunteer a bit, just for the first year or so. We've got a couple free clinics, and I used to volunteer, but I just don't have consistent time that I can give to do that.
Yeah.
So I maintain the license. I still do continuing it, and my license is
Really?
good. Yeah.
Is that a lot of work to do?
No, I have to do continuing education classes and send in a check every couple years. I worked too hard for that license. I don't want to let it go.
Yeah.
So I haven't used it for years, but I still have the license.
Well, also, I hear that you travel a lot.
Yeah. I've got kind of an idiosyncratic way of traveling. I've been to a lot of places, mostly places that other people wouldn't want to go. And I travel on an ultra budget kind of a style. I do a lot of backpacking. I stay in hostels. I've done carrying a tent. I don't very often go to restaurants when I travel. I go to grocery stores and buy some things. But I've been to very odd places that most people wouldn't want to go. Yeah, one of my claims to fame, I've celebrated Mass on all 7 continents.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And my biggest claim to fame, this is the one that's going to be in my obituary maybe someday.
Okay.
I took a trip to Istanbul some years ago, which is, of course, used to be Constantinople. The great church in Istanbul is Hagia Sophia. It was built by Constantine himself back in the 4th century, rebuilt in the 5th and then again in the 6th. But the building there now dates to the 6th century. It was our greatest cathedral for 1,000 years until St. Peter's in Rome was built and is bigger. But that was 1,000 years later. It was turned into a mosque back in the 1400s and has been a mosque ever since. Then it was turned into a museum back in the 1920s. So anyway, I traveled to Hagia Sophia with my little portable Mass kit in my pocket. I carry tiny little vessels and just a little bit of wine and things, thinking that this was our cathedral for 1,000 years and really needs to be reclaimed. So I found a dark corner and sat on the floor and I celebrated Mass in Hagia Sophia.
Wow.
Could be the first time in 500 years that's happened. I don't know.
Yeah.
But St. John Chrysostom was the bishop there. St. Gregory Nazianzen was the bishop there. So they celebrated with me. Otherwise, it was just me, and did it pretty clandestinely. I mean, it was just sitting on the floor in a dark corner.
Could you have gotten in trouble?
Maybe. Maybe. But
that's awesome.
There it is. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What do you want to try this?
Let's give it a try. Don Bosco is named after him?
Well, it's St. Giulio Malvasia, and then it says Di Castia Nuevo Don Bosco.
Okay.
So I don't know if that's where it's from.
Beats me. I don't speak Italian either, but
no.
Yeah, from the castle of Don Bosco or the house, I'm not sure.
It's a red, sweet, sparkling wine.
Sparkling.
It's probably supposed to be cold.
I like sweet.
Yeah, that's more.
I like sweet.
That's closer to Fago.
Tastes more like real grapes. I like this.
So, like when you're talking about traveling on the cheap and kind of backpacking and stuff, is this like Lonely Planet? Are you familiar with Lonely
Yeah,
Planet
sure.
books?
Yep. I've used those a lot. Mm-hmm. Yep.
They kind of give you like shoestring budget is kind of their tagline.
That's my style. I don't stay in nice hotels. You could do that here in town, but you see more of the world if you go on the cheap.
Do you usually do it by yourself or with others?
I've done both. I've done a lot of solo travel. I've got a good friend, a priest up in Minnesota, who travels the same style that I do. The two of us have traveled together a lot of times. I got a couple other friends I've taken along too, but I've had a lot of people decline trips with me. Believe it or not.
because you rough it too much?
Yeah, that's
they want
not
something
most
a little more plush.
Style. Yeah, that's not the style of most people. So,
I think it sounds great.
Yep.
What are some of your favorite places that you've been?
Well, one of the best was Mongolia. My priest friend in Minnesota studied ornithology before the seminary. He studied birds.
Okay.
He raises all kinds of birds, and he knows all about migration patterns and nesting patterns and all those kinds of things. And he's big into birds.
Is he a bird watcher?
He's a bird watcher, but he also raises them, and he sells some birds, and he does taxidermy with birds, and he also does falconry. He's licensed in the state of Minnesota to capture a hawk and train it and hunt with it. So we discovered in Mongolia they do falconry with eagles. Western Mongolia, they're nomadic folks who go off on horseback with an eagle on their arm and hunt. So we found a guide that would take us out there, and we lived with a nomadic family for a week and off hunting on horseback with an eagle. Yeah, great adventure.
Wow.
Great adventure. We did catch a fox. We got a fox.
With an eagle?
Yeah.
The eagle caught the fox for you.
That's right. Yeah, you sit up on the top of a cliff. The eagles are good at soaring downwards, but they're not great at flapping upwards. So you sit on the cliff, take the hood off the eagle, and he's got very sharp eyes, and whenever anything starts to move, off he goes, and he swoops down and grabs hold of the fox. Then you have to rush down on
he can't bring it back
the
to
horse.
you.
No, he just grabs hold.
Yeah.
And if you let him there too long, he's going to start to tear it apart and eat it. So you got to rush down on the horse, and then with a club, you hit the fox over the head and put the hood back on the eagle, and then you can skin the fox and sell the fur.
Wow.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Just a typical adventure in the life of Father Tom.
That's it. That's it.
So where did you say that was?
It's Mongolia.
Mongolia.
Yeah, Western Mongolia.
Huh.
Yep.
Where else have you been?
You name it. I've been to a lot of places. I tried to reclaim the cathedral in Canton in China also.
Do you have a list of places to reclaim?
Well, I got a lot of interesting places I've celebrated masses, but it seemed to me...
I like the idea of reclaiming a cathedral.
The cathedrals in China, for the most part, have been taken over by the government and turned into museums. So I crossed over. I'd been in Hong Kong, crossed over. I was traveling solo on this trip too. Crossed over into China and went to the train station to get a train up to Canton, which is pronounced Guangzhou in Chinese. I thought I could just walk up to the counter and hand them some money and say Guangzhou and get on the train and all would be well. But I got to the train station and found they had hundreds of trains and the schedules were all in Chinese, which I guess I hadn't really thought out too well. So it was kind of overwhelming. So I didn't make it. I didn't make it to Canton. So I did celebrate a mass illegally right there in the train station, but that was the best I could do.
Oh, wow.
So I wasn't able to find the cathedral, but I celebrated another illegal mass at least.
Another illegal mass.
Yeah.
We're here with Father Tom Shoemaker for Flavor of the Week, Part 2, where we are trying various wines from Captain Cork. Last week we did the George, which is kind of their namesake and flagship wine, if you will. Today we are trying the Malvasia, I'm guessing. I got it just because it says Don Bosco on it. Do you know much about Don Bosco?
Yeah, a great saint from Turin, Italy. He was known for doing magic tricks and entertaining kids.
Yeah,
I don't know if he had any connection with wine. I don't know that.
Yeah, this is more sweet.
It was a sparkling wine too.
Yeah,
as it came out of the bottle, it's room temperature, but it had kind of a foam, kind of a mist coming out of the bottle at least.
Yeah, I'm guessing I was supposed to chill this, and
Maybe,
I kind of missed on that memo.
Yep.
Next 2 times we'll do a Chardonnay and Our Daily Red. The Chardonnay is at Franciscan Estate. So we've got kind of a theme going here.
Yep.
But talking about your travel, and I like this idea of celebrating illegal masses and reclaiming cathedrals and things. What are some places on your bucket list?
I would like to go back to China again. I've been to China a couple times and done illegal masses, but never in a place that needs to be reclaimed. I haven't done that.
When you go to China,
I'm not sure how smart that is.
Yeah. When you go to China, how long do you spend there?
Well, a few days. My trips are usually only a couple of weeks. I don't have extended times off, so a couple of weeks I see all that I can see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in a couple weeks, you're spending a couple days in China, and you're going other places as well?
And in fact, my last trip, I took a train up to Tibet, made it up into Lhasa, Tibet.
Okay.
Which is also a little bit spotty. They don't allow missionaries or religious type people there. So on the visa, I didn't think I'd probably have any chance of getting there if I told them I was a priest.
Okay.
So they asked occupation. I wrote dentist in, which is
true.
honest.
You
It's
are a
honest.
dentist.
Yeah. So I made it into Tibet and got to see the sights and do some masses there as well. Yep.
And I don't know anything about the culture in Tibet. I imagine lots of spirituality that is
totally Buddhist. It's totally Buddhist, yeah. Tibetan Buddhism is a big thing. Tibet is now part of communist China, so lots and lots of Chinese have moved in who are officially atheist, but it's a Buddhist culture, and we visit a lot of Buddhist temples there. Mm-hmm.
Do you talk with them much? Do you interact? Do you
they wouldn't
pray near them, with them?
Kind of. They wouldn't allow. I was traveling with my priest friend from Minnesota on that trip. They wouldn't allow us just to go in by ourselves. We had to have an official tour guide. So we had to line up a Tibetan fellow who would take us around once we got there. And he spoke good English, so he was able to give us the scoop on a lot of things and probably shared more than he should have about the political situation, which is dicey right now in Tibet. But very fascinating trip. Yeah, we got to visit several Buddhist monasteries. We couldn't communicate with anybody who was speaking their Tibetan language, but just a fascinating trip.
When did this start, your enthusiasm for traveling?
It started back when I was in dental school. I took a trip to France. My younger brother was studying as an exchange student for a year in France. I went over to meet him, and I made a mistake on the trains and ended up getting off in a tiny little town in the middle of France. It was right before Christmas. It was snowy and cold, and I was all by myself, and I was about 21 at the time. I ended up lost in the middle of France in the nighttime, and there was no place to go in a tiny little town. So I went up to the manager at the train station and asked him if there's any hotel in town. He said, just a minute, and he called over two ladies who were wearing fur coats, had lots of makeup and bright red dyed hair, and introduced them to me, and they said, come with us. So they took me. It turns out that's just the fashion in France. Everybody wears lots of makeup and orange dyed hair and fur coats. Yeah. So they took me to a hotel where they told me there was no room. They took me to a second hotel, and then they just invited me to come home with them. The two of them, with their husbands and their kids, were having a big meal. So I was treated as a VIP as they served me this 7-course French dinner, playing with their kids. They performed French music for me on the saxophone, and I played some American ragtime for them on the piano, and we struck it off and just made a great friendship, and it was a great experience. So I spent the night on the couch at their house, and the next day they took me down to the train station and got me on the right train to get out and see my brother. But made some great friends. We corresponded for years after that, and just got the travel lust with that. There are good people out there, and if you're willing to have an adventure, you can sure do it.
So has your traveling increased over the years, decreased? Has it been an arc?
Yeah, it's been pretty steady. I try to take a big trip every couple years.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I want to hear more about your different hobbies, including now I've just added I have a whole list of your hobbies to talk about. Adding to the list, ragtime piano.
Yeah.
So we'll hear more about that coming up. Also, I want to talk about Pope on the Rope coming up on a future episode of Flavor of the Week with Father Tom Shoemaker. We are 2 wines in. We've got 2 to go of our wine tasting, our sampling from Captain Cork. We appreciate their donation here. But also, our Flavor of the Week is brought to you by Banditos, Mexican food all over the Fort Wayne area, 5 different locations, fresh, made daily. Check them out, and we appreciate their support. So coming up, we've got more Flavor of the Week right here with Father Tom Shoemaker.